If you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. Today we are going to be analyzing the weed industry, because we all want to make money in the stock market, right? Otherwise, why would we spend hours of our lives discussing in random forums with people that we'll never meet in reality? Well, one of the ways of making money in the stock market is by investing in growing industries. Industries like the technology industry, for example, in the 2000s, like electrical vehicles right now. So today we are going to be analyzing the weed industry and see if it is one of these growth industries. Also, please stick to the end if you want to find out my top 3 stocks for this sector. Let's go! You've probably heard the saying, if you can beat them, join them. Well, that's exactly the direction we're headed right now with the weed industry. For a very long time, the US government has declared war on drugs. For example, in 2018, over $47 billion was spent fighting the war on drugs, and over 1.6 million arrests were executed, with over 40% of those arrests being due to marijuana possession. For a very long time, there has been this stigma that cannabis will get you addicted, cannabis is bad, you can overdose from cannabis. Well, guess what? How many people have overdosed due to cannabis consumption? Zero. Nada. Zip. So you can obviously have bad reactions to it, of course, but you cannot overdose like you can from opioids. And that's the main point against legalizing cannabis. People have this idea that cannabis equals bad, cannabis equals junkie, cannabis equals homeless people on the street spending all their money on drugs. So we must ask the question, how do we fight this stigma? How do we fight this idea that cannabis is bad? Well, according to the website Canacon, the first step that we have to take is starting the conversation. Well, I believe we're through that step. 15 states plus the District of Columbia have already legalized all types of use of cannabis, plus Governor Andrew Cuomo has just signed a bill this past week legalizing recreational use of cannabis in New York. Including those 16 states, a total of 35 states already allow cannabis use for medical purposes. Also, in 1969, only 12% of the US population believed that marijuana should be legal. That number was at 31% in 2000, and it now sits at 68%. So based on these numbers, I personally do believe that the cannabis industry is here to stay and grow. But if you're still not convinced, let me show you some other numbers. In 2017, there were almost 123,000 people working in this sector. Now in 2021, this number sits at over 320,000. What is even more impressive is that 77,000 jobs were created during the year 2020, even when unemployment rates were breaking records. This is great because it shows that this is a sector that is recession-proof. In America, there are now more people working in the legal cannabis sector than there are dentists, electrical engineers, for example. So if this doesn't convince you that
Cha real smooth.
There are now more Americans working in the legal cannabis sector than there are dentists or electrical engineers, for example. And sales increased by 67% during 2020. Now, if these numbers don't convince you that this is a legit sector that is here to stay and grow, you can just pause the video and skip to the next, because I don't believe nothing else will. So we've seen how the weed industry has grown over the years and where it sits at right now. But what does the future hold for it? That's what we are going to see next. Now, I mentioned that New York has just legalized all types of marijuana use, but this news is much bigger than just New York, because this could influence all the states that are still behind, all the states that are conservative, where marijuana is still illegal, to at least start having the conversation about legalizing it. Plus, the cannabis market is undoubtedly going to grow in the future. Take a look at the expectations for the cannabis market. It is expected to reach $100 billion in market value by 2030. The most conservative expectation that I found said that it was expected to reach $85 billion by 2030. So there's no alternative. This is a sector that is going to keep growing. I read multiple sources that said that they expect 2021 to be a record year in the number of states legalizing recreational use for marijuana. If this is the case, there's nowhere for the stocks in this industry to go but up. However, there are still issues for companies that work in the cannabis sector. Cannabis is still considered an illegal substance at a federal level, so banks cannot work with companies that sell cannabis because they are afraid of being used, or at least accused, of participating in a money laundering scheme. So that's where the Safe Banking Act comes in. The Safe Banking Act is a bill that will allow banks to safely work with marijuana businesses. Now, for the time being, as these businesses don't have easy access to loans, this obliges them to work on a cash basis. And this makes them the perfect target for criminal activity. And I'm not making this stuff up, this is what the National Associations of Attorneys General said, so you can check that out. So, do you remember at the start of the video when I said that $47 billion were spent fighting the war on drugs? Now, imagine this $47 billion being cut in half because marijuana would be legal. Imagine cannabis businesses being able to work with banks and the millions they manage being traceable. Also imagine states not only not spending money to fight the war on marijuana use, but still getting taxes from it, so getting money back from people buying marijuana. So I don't see a reason why this bill wouldn't, or this act wouldn't pass. And this is some news that you really want to stay up to date with. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that with or without Biden, cannabis or marijuana would be legalized. Now Biden is an interesting point because candidate Biden was pro-legalization. Now President Biden on the other hand, apparently several staffers at the White House were let go or fired with their only indiscretion being that they consumed cannabis in the past, plus they did it in states where it was perfectly legal. Also, Vice President Kamala Harris was seen as a pioneer in the fight for cannabis legalization. But now her staff is saying that their position is the same as President Biden's. But I do believe that with Democrats controlling both the House and the Senate, that laws on this matter will be passed way more easily, plus there are some Republicans that have come out and said that they are also pro-legalization. In summary, the future seems somewhat bright for the weed industry, but now you're thinking to yourself, oh really, but how do I make money from this? I want to make some money. Well, let's check out some stocks in this industry, shall we? So as you can see, I couldn't finish the video yesterday, I have to film the rest today, but nonetheless, let's keep going, let's check out some stocks. The first company we are going to talk about is the Innovative Industrial Properties, ticker IIPR. What this company does is that they engage in the acquisition, disposition, development and management of industrial facilities leased to tenants in the medical cannabis industry. Basically, they own the facilities on which cannabis companies operate. For this reason, it is actually a REIT, a real estate investment trust. And as it is a REIT, it has to pay a dividend. It pays a dividend of 2.93%. It isn't that high of a dividend, but still, if you can get paid in dividends while still getting exposure to the cannabis industry, so much the better, right? Just take a quick look at the predictions for this company. They are expected to reach $265 million in sales by 2022. EPS is expected to reach $6.63. When it comes to financials, they obviously have big margins since they are a REIT, but looking at revenue, it is constantly growing since 2018. Net income margin has also been growing, and as it operates in real estate, it is expected to have a lot of debt, but still, debt to equity or debt to capital ratios have been constantly decreasing, so that's just awesome, it's great. PE is high right now with a multiple of 58, but it is expected to drop to 39.6 in the next 12 months. But I personally don't stress much about PE anyway, so it doesn't bother me personally. But I still believe that this is a great company to invest in, a great investment opportunity. Now the next company we are going to talk about is Green Thumb Industries, ticker GTBIF. It produces and sells multiple or different cannabis products in the US, both for medical and recreational use. It sells in its own retail stores, also through third-party retail stores. Sales are expecting to reach a whopping $1.12 billion by 2022, having 5x since 2019. EPS is expected to reach $0.74, and it has a price target of $47.67 according to TipRanks, with the lowest prediction being at $39.77. So you're actually getting a lot of upside with very little downside. Now, it does have a small PE ratio of over 400. So I don't bother much about PE ratio, as I said, so it doesn't scare me. But if you don't feel comfortable investing in a company with a PE ratio of over 400, it is totally understandable. Also, revenue has been constantly growing and they just became profitable this year. Now there's a big issue with this company. It is trading in OTC, over the counter, meaning it's not trading in such a regulated exchange as, for example, NYSE or Nasdaq. So you might have to keep that in mind. Your broker might not even offer the possibility to buy shares of this company, or they might ask for some extra fees, so pay attention to that. Now, if you still don't feel confident investing in one specific company because, I don't know, the company doesn't please you, such as a company having a P ratio over 400, or if you still don't believe or don't feel so confident in the cannabis industry, you could invest in an ETF, an exchange traded fund, so that you still get some exposure to the industry, to the sector. Enter MJ, an ETF that tracks the Prime Alternative Harvest Index, an index that has the goal of tracking event-driven news and long-term trends in the cannabis industry, as you can read on the screen. Now, this ETF holds the main stocks that everybody discusses about when talking about the cannabis industry, as for example GWPH, Afria, Tilray, or Kronos, as for example. Therefore, if you want to just have some exposure or invest in marijuana in general, I believe MJ ETF is a great starting point. So this was all I had planned to talk about today for this video. This was my research. If you are planning to invest in the cannabis industry, please let me know down in the comments below what are your top stock picks. And yeah, that was all I had planned. So I hope you have a nice day and I hope to see you in the next one.